In general, view refers to the user interface of the application. It is often used to describe both the HTML that contains the user interface markup and the page generated from that HTML. But you'll find that some AngularJS documentation makes a distinction. A piece of HTML that contains the user interface markup and Angular directives is called a template. Angular parses and processes the HTML from the template. The loaded, transformed, and rendered result is then called the view. The view is sometimes referred to as a live template because the individual parts of the view are dynamic. Throughout this course, I use the term view in the more general sense, referring to both the HTML and the generated page. With that cleared up, let's create our view. Here we are back in WebStorm. We'll add the markup for our view directly into the index.html file. The product list view uses an HTML table to display a header and the detail product rows. I'm going to paste the HTML in right inside this body tag. So here's the code. As we walk through this code, you'll get a sense for how Angular helps make the HTML more expressive and easier to read. Let's start at the top. We've already talked about the body tag and the ng-app directive. Inside the body tag is our table. That's a standard HTML table. Inside that is a t-head tag. That's also a standard HTML tag, and we're defining our headers. The t-body tag defines the body for the table. Inside the body is a tr tag. This tag uses the Angular ng-repeat directive to repeat a row for each product in the set of products. So let's see how we would read that. So we're building a tr element, and we're going to repeat that element for each product in the set of products. That's pretty expressive what that's doing. But where is products defined? Since we don't yet have a controller, we can define the list of products using the Angular ng-init directive. We'll put that directive in as an attribute of the table tag. Any directives or binding expressions within the table will then be able to access the list of products. So I'm going to replace the table tag here with a revised table tag. I'm using the ng-init directive. I'm setting it equal to an array of products, and I'm defining that array of products. Does that code look familiar? It's the product data we defined for our model. So when prototyping or just starting out, you can use the ng-init directive to define the model directly in the HTML. That allows you to run the application with some test data before connecting to a backend service. So let's go back down and look at the rest of the t-body tag. So we're repeating a row for every product in that set of products. We have 2 products in that list, so we should get 2 rows. Inside that row, we've got our columns, which are defined with the standard TD or table data tags. Each is bound to a property of the model using the double curly brace syntax, which is an Angular binding expression. These binding expressions allow you to insert dynamic values into the HTML. A binding expression is a JavaScript-like code snippet that can perform calculations, append strings, or reference model properties. In our case, we're referencing model properties. The binding expression syntax tells Angular to replace the text content of the associated HTML element, in our case the TD element, with the value of the defined expression. In this example, the text content of each TD element is replaced with the value of the defined product property. The first TD tag contains an image. The source property of the image is bound to the image URL property of product. The title of the image is bound to the product name. So that's all the code we need. Let's run it and see what happens. Okay, that worked, but it doesn't look very nice. The images are way too big, and the price should be shown as a currency. Let's fix that now. So we'll fix the image by giving it a style attribute. So that defines a width for our image and gives it a margin. And we can fix the price. Angular provides a set of filters that format or filter the value of an expression for display to the user. We'll use the currency filter that's built into Angular. The filter is defined with a pipe character, the filter name, in our case currency, and optionally any filter parameters. We don't have any parameters needed for our currency. So let's run again and see the results. Ooh, that looks better. Just to be sure everything worked okay, let's open the developer tools. Whoops. What happened here? We're getting failed to load resource. The server responded with a status of 404 not found. And look at that address. Oh, that's our binding expression. %7b is the left curly brace. So it's curly brace, product.image URL, right curly brace, right curly brace. The application is trying to load the image before Angular can evaluate the binding expression. Then when Angular does evaluate the binding expression, the images are correctly retrieved and displayed. How do we stop that intermediate error? Well, let's go change the source attribute here to the ng-source directive. That way, the browser won't attempt to find the image until after Angular evaluates the binding expression. Now, when we run again and display the developer tools, you'll notice that there are no errors. We can refresh the page. We can see that it brought down the two images. But what we have now is more of a prototype than a real application. If we want to build a full-featured Angular application, we need to define that application using a module. We'll do that next.